Okay, how's it, everybody? Welcome, or welcome back, as the case may be, to the first Kauai Writers Garden event of the year. So very special guest tonight, which we'll get to in a little bit. But first, a little bit about us, the Kauai Writers Garden, and a couple of housekeeping things. Anyway, so about us, the Kauai Writers Garden. For those who don't know, or if you do, just as a reminder, the heart and kind of the kuleana behind what we're trying to do is to have your garden kind of water and nurture the next generation, as well as the current, of writers and, as possible, editors, the next generation, whatever that may be, we define that, of our writers of the literary community on Kauai. We also want to connect Kauai to the broader Hawaii literary community, as well as to kind of celebrate our local authors, because a lot of times I think they don't really get as much of a chance to shine as they deserve. So, what's that? I guess so. Okay, so, testing, 1, 2, 3. It's good? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Not that I really need a mic. Usually you need like a mic for me to like turn me down. So I'm more quieter. But anyway, so all that said, we're very grateful that you guys came out to join us and help us, support us in our mission to get the best speaks on the mic, and also to nurture Kauai's growing scene. That involves these quarterly events where we bring out someone like Megan or someone else notable in the Hawaii literary community. Well, I won't say who. If you want to know who, you got a sign-up sheet somewhere around here. You can sign up
over there.
Over there. Oh yeah, on the table in the back. You can sign up, join our email list, and you can find out what we're going to meet, who's going to come out. We have some very special guests coming this year. It's going to be a lot of fun. And for those who are maybe a little bit more serious about refining their craft as a writer or a poet or whatever, we also meet once a month to kind of, more like a dedicated language group. Kind of like refine the actual craft of writing. But tonight, it's going to be the more fun night. We have a very special guest. And we'll get to the intros in a little bit. But first, I'm going to intro another very special guest. Very talented author, poet, essayist. Starting to dip his toes, I think, right? Into fiction, all that kind of stuff. We'll see, yeah. Maybe this is the start. I call him the Kauai Poet Laureate, and if there's any justice in this world, eventually he'll be the Hawaii Poet Laureate. Jonathan Medeiros.
Mahalo, Thomas. Mahalo to Addison, Kauai Writers Garden. Mahalo to Megan for being here. Mahalo to all of you guys for coming today. My Haumana, thank you very much for showing up. Okay, so the main event is coming up later. Me and Thomas are opening act. So I'm just going to read a couple of really short things that have been on my mind. You guys can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Two really short ideas first. I can't find the quote, so I'm going to paraphrase, but I was reading Stephen King one time, and he was talking about monsters and ghosts and the problems that appear in his books. And he said that the monsters are not like fake, they're not fantasy. Monsters are real, they're inside of us. To him, the monsters are the things that we don't want to look at, that we don't want to deal with, but they are demanding that you deal with them, right? And then that becomes the monster. James Baldwin says something similar about the need to face things. It's the only way to deal with something is to face it. My students know that. We just finished reading James Baldwin. He also said something about corpses. All of your buried corpses now are beginning to speak, right? The more you try to bury something and forget it, it's going to come back. And when they do come back, you better listen. That's what I think. So I'm going to read a tiny bit of a poem that I wrote recently. Stanza 5 of this poem. And then I'm going to read a little short piece of an essay or story. Piece of fiction, I guess. This poem is called I Am What You Call One Poregi. There's a whole bunch of other stuff about that. But this is near the end of the poem. And it says, I should probably put my glasses on. It says, and we still use the word plantation to cutely describe our houses. And we ignore everything buried, still breathing beneath that word. The months-long sea voyages, the 12-hour workdays, the company tokens for the company store, the dozens to a home, the camp schools, the hooked machetes and thousands of acres monocropped, a burial shroud spread over every inch of tillable land. The pretending that plate lunches and musubi make up for the killing of Olelo and Mele, and for the killing of those 16 workers who were just asking for better pay. And then for the burying of them in a mass unmarked grave that now you call a park. Thank you. So when those corpses come up out of the ground at that park in Hanapepe, you probably should listen to what they say. This is a short little piece of speculative fiction, prose poetry. A shorter version was published last year in a cool micro journal called Mythic Picnic. It's called Maybe a Ghost, or The Poregi on the Porch. You get it's a theme here. Portuguese. Okay. Maybe a ghost, or the Poregi on the porch. Oh, Billy, you want Pocho out on the porch? Kaisen laughs. Laugh fills his brain. That's funny, yeah? Maybe he's one Porcho. He laughs again, and Billy looks like he's pissed off already. Laughter is not on his mind. Kalamaiga, one swear word. You've heard it before. Bro, we don't call that one fucking porch guy. That's the lanai. Oh, okay then. Get one Poregi on the lanai. Like a newscaster now. He is staring. Sitting. Just a lot at. Pause fills the room. Pause is what that moment seems to say to these men. And Billy even more pissed off now. What you mean, Ann? And what? Ann. And what you like me do? Billy spits when he is loud. Kaisen's eyes, his whole face follows the spittle through the air. Then he stares, shrugs, looks down. He shrugs and looks up. Well, who's that Pocho out on the Pune? You told him come. Try asking what he like, Billy demands, without answering Kaisen's question. Okay, I'm going to ask. Turning, raising eyebrows. Hey, what you like, guy? You Milton's cousin or what? He just looking at me. Laes. Dead eyes kind. Maybe he dead. Like, maybe he one ghost. Maybe a ghost fills the room, like sludge under the sand at the beach after the rain. Maybe a ghost fills them both. Ask him if you like to eat, Billy suggests. Hey, you like food? You're hungry, come in. My AI. Kaisen gestures, fingers together like a kiss, lips together, too, like a kiss, pursed then parted. The narrator thinks of another poet's lips, and Kaisen turns his back to provide privacy as the narrator lingers on those lips. Cough. I think he's not hungry, Billy. He's just looking at me. Looking right through me like one freaking ghost. Everybody hungry, guy. Everybody needs something to eat. Maybe they just don't know what they need, but everybody needs something, right? Need fills the room. Need was already in the room. like a pause settling from the ceiling, like the opposite of something in your stomach, like a ghost or a pit or the sludge under the sand at the beach after the rain. And the poragi on the pune turns his head to the sea, to the moon. He is hungry. He is a ghost, or he is the sea, or he's just one poragi waiting, sitting. Or a pocho on the couch, he laughing now, shaking his bones in one bag. You see these bones? Feed them even if they're not hungry, even when Billy's pissed off. Think about the bones under your skin too. Oh, I haven't done the job, I forgot. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over now to the man, Thomas Iannucci, who, as it says on his bio, took the literary world by storm in 2023, but I think it was earlier than that. Thomas is an amazing writer, musician, person, so we're lucky to have him here. Thomas Iannucci, let's go.
I'll give you $20 for that intro. Is that my water, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not thirsty, I thought I did it. I was just staring at it the whole time. No. So, I'm going to be doing a reading from a story that I really like, that nobody else did, because I never could get it published. But maybe it's just a little too strange. But in honor of Megan and my new and your longtime favorite, maybe author, Joy Williams, in honor of a little bit of that kind of fiction what John read, it's a little stranger. So this is from a piece, or from a collection of kind of like fly-fi, post-apocalyptic Hawaii, where it starts snowing one day and then it stops. Kind of like The Road by Cormac McCarthy, but like in Hawaii and snowing. And this has Josiah Bancroft, one of my favorite. Okay, you might get bored on for that knowledge. But as Josiah Bancroft once said, it seems to me that when doing readings for short stories, the end is pretty important. But in this one, the setup is kind of important too. So to read the beginning, and skip all the middle, and then go to the end. So, with that said, this is an excerpt from a short story called The Toad. The toad was watching him. He knew, because he was watching the toad. He was watching the toad was watching him. He as in Cyrus. Sai as in Saimin, which is like ramen, Hawaiian style. Well, local style. Hawaiians didn't eat Saimin. The locals in Hawaii did. Well, sometimes Hawaiians ate Saimin, but it wasn't Hawaiian food. It was local food. Locals and Hawaiians weren't the same, even though they were all from Hawaii. All Keikioka, but not Hokanaka. Remember that much. Not that it mattered anymore because they were all dead. And anyway, those old distinctions died with them. Now, there were the dead, and there were the survivors, and there was the snow. And there was the toad, which was watching Cyrus. Sai like Simon, Russ, that was spelled like the first part of Russell, his dad's name, or pronounced like the first part of Riss, which had a W, but you didn't pronounce that. Cyrus remembered that from school. School with a CH, but it was pronounced like a K. Cyrus hated school the few years he'd gone, but now that school was closed for winter break permanently, and they'd never be able to make him go back ever again because they were all dead, except for Cyrus and the toad. Cyrus, lying on his stomach to be at eye level with his nemesis, stared at the toad, daring it to attack him. The toad, ever the coward, refused to make the first move, but that was okay. Cyrus was patient. He learned to be patient finally after the snowfall. There was no more TV, no more internet, no more phones, just the snow and Cyrus, and occasionally the people from the government, which is what they were still calling themselves, who came to drop off food once in a while. But Just the snow and Cyrus and the government and the toad. Screw you, said Cyrus, attempting to provoke the toad. The toad did nothing but blink, his membranous eyelids slowly sliding shut, then opening again twice as fast, thrice as fast, thrice was a good word. Thrice was like twice, but three. Cyrus read that in a book. His dad had given it to him for his birthday, the book. Because when he still had a book, and a birthday, and a dad. But they were all gone now. It was just Cyrus and... I hate you, said Cyrus again. The toad ignored him. It breathed methodically, regarding him in what could only be described as a sinister manner. He licked his lips. Cyrus licked his lips, not those lips. They were cracked lips, obviously. And anyway, without looking away, he slowly reached behind himself and grabbed a pencil, sharp. It was the only reminder of school that he had, that he hated so much. School, not school, CH, not K. Even though they all sounded like a K, it wasn't. He had to remember that. There was a lot he had to remember, and yet, most of the time, all he could remember was the toad. And then there's some more stuff. And then they inch closer and closer as he kind of like chases this toad closer and closer to a snowbank, which is on the edge of the cliff. And so Cyrus, despite the burning in his chest, and with adrenaline pumping through him, Cyrus pounced. He leapt at the toad, roaring, and stabbed at it with a pencil with all his strength. He missed. The pencil, along with Cyrus, plunged at full force into the snowdrift that the toad had been sitting on. Unable to support his weight, it collapsed, sending Cyrus and the pencil, but not the toad, tumbling down a short cliff that had, until now, been obscured from view. The rocks at the bottom were cold and hard, cold like snow, but hard, much, much, much harder. Harder than anything he'd ever felt before, and much more painful. The pain the rocks caused him as a small body had crashed against them, breaking him into pieces internally, was matched only by the sharp pain in his throat where the pencil had been jammed through upon impact. Cyrus lay, cold and stunned and dying at the bottom of the cliff. There was no one left to come and save him, he thought. Not his family, not the school with the CH or a K, not the people from the government. All that was left was Cyrus for a little longer. There was a croak from beside him. Using what strength remained in him, Cyrus tilted his broken head towards the all too familiar noise, and through his vision, which was already blurring and fading, he saw the shape he would have recognized anywhere. The toad was watching Cyrus, was watching the toad, was watching him die. Cyrus laughed, and Cyrus died, and all that was left was the toad. Something a little stranger amongst all these strangers. We're all friends. But, with that said, this is all the boring, the kind, we get that out of the way. Now the main event starts. But before I introduce our guest for the evening, I just want to say, I feel that maybe you're a little shy and very humble and don't really hype yourself up the way that you need to or deserve to, so I'm going to hype her up a little bit more as I introduce Megan. So, our special guest of the night is Megan Kamalei Kakimoto, USA Today best-selling author, finalist for the King Prize, winner of the Elliott Caves Award, winner of Honolulu Magazine's, was it author under 35? Yeah.
Best author of any age.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, I'm getting to that. As Jonathan passes around something we're going to do kind of fun after this, I will also say, guys, this is like really, I can't emphasize this enough to you. And I was trying to think of a way to like articulate this, but I'll just say that Megan is the great Hawaiian author of our generation. I think it's Megan Kamalei Kakimoto, everybody.
Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I, for one, think it's unfair to go after Jonathan Thomas. So, I'm not going to. We're going to. I am really excited. This is something that I've only done once before in terms of what has just been passed out. But I really thought it would be a great way to get started. I'm going to read something, a short thing from another story, but I was really excited about the idea of sort of doing a collective reading. And I hope this will be made a little more clear once I start talking about what I'm going to talk about and do some writing exercises. But I'm really interested in collective and community. And so with that, Jonathan so kindly passed out some slips of paper. And these are just the lines from the first story of my collection, Every Drop is a Man's Nightmare. The story is titled A Catalog of Kanaka Superstitions, as Told by Your Mother. And each numbered slip of paper has a line from the story. And I thought it could be really fun for us to just do a group reading. I don't know if we want to hand the mic. I can do the mic person. Or if we want to just
Be loud.
speak loud. Yeah?
Be loud.
Be loud?
What do you think?
Yeah? Is everyone open for that? Yeah?
Will it get picked up on the title?
Yeah? Sweet. All right. Be as loud as you want. I'm not very loud, so I'm working on it. But yeah, the slips are numbered. I have number 1, and so I'll just read number 1. And I think if anyone has any questions, but the slips are numbered, so whoever has number 2 can go right after me. So this is a catalog of Kanaka superstitions as told by your mother. Don't sleep with your feet by the door. Those dangling, dreaming toes are sweet as sucrose to the night marchers, and they will drag you from your slumber by your feet.
Don't sleep with your head under the open window. When the demon visits, he will wedge his knife through the slit and slice you open by the neck.
Don't drive over the holly with pork in your car. The spirits of Kamapua'a and Hale will kindle a war in that tinder box you call a head, leave you with the ashes of lifelong bad luck scattered over your mushy brain bits.
Don't saddle your boat with bananas. You'll flounder along the seas with more bad luck. And of course, no more fish for you.
Don't give your sister a flower leg. She's hapai. You know, due in just a few weeks. If you close her womb like that, the baby will slip from her legs before it's ready, choking on its fork.
Don't kill the moth. Could also be your father.
That's okay. This is the beauty of it.
Don't smash the mobile with your slip on. That's our honor work. Every day relatives who hasn't passed over come back to the last few days of the home's death. It could be cousin Jerry who died last year, or your cousin's grandma or his father.
Don't bury those chopsticks in your rice. That's how we left the chopsticks at your dad's funeral. All straight up like that. Bad luck.
Don't whistle at night. You know what happens if the night markers hear you. You know how fast they'll climb over the koalas just to whittle down your spirit. You'll have to put everything you've got into evading them, should you hope to whistle and live. My baby, my girl, don't you want to live?
Don't stack those dishes like that. 4 is a rotten number. You know the kanji for she is the same kanji for death? How much money you spent on your Japanese lessons and still you make mistakes. You should study longer, work harder, learn our language, practice our penmanship, do good. Make your father proud. After everything that has happened to us, don't you want to make your father so proud?
Don't stand between your sister and her husband like that. You're not her kid. And anyway, you standing in the middle like that means you'll be the first to die. You like the mafia guy dead? What would I do without my baby? I can't live without you, my baby.
Don't pinch your nose like that. That smell is only fresh flowers. The fruit of music in our house. No matter that we don't keep flowers here, the smell stays from the other side. The rush of Clark de Lima, sweet Parker of Hōʻike. Don't you know these are the fragrances of your father? The spirit is paying us a visit, finally.
Don't point at your father's headstone like that. His soul should be at peace, not summoned by the strength of your baby finger. If you think he wants to be anywhere near this place, you can let him.
That's incredible. Thank you all. Oh, I'm so moved. I love doing that because I also feel like it's always different too, and I really get really excited hearing it in everyone's voices as a collective. So thank you for being willing to do that. I'm going to read sort of the opening of another story, which I actually have only, I'm trying to remember, I've only read it aloud once at a local high school. And this will be only the second time, and inspired by Thomas. But also, I realized that this story is called Story of Men.
Yes.
And it's written in the sort of the chorus collective, in the third person, or sorry, the collective we point of view. And I thought that, again, we're circling, I promise I'll land the plane, but the stuff that I want to talk about today is about collective voices, and I think that this story does, tries to touch on that. So I'm just going to read the opening, first few pages. Again, this is called Story of Men. The day we put the dryer out on the street was the day the Menehune showed its face. Leimomi had purchased it used at a neighborhood Tutu's estate sale. But it was George who decreed the dryer nothing more than a piece of junk. Its lint catcher dewy with mold, its knobs axles of rust. Most importantly, the drum was far too small to accommodate the linens of 2 parents and 6 keiki. No ordinary dryer would do. A Kanaka Ohana demanded a Kanaka dryer. But Leimomi resented the waste of money. She was old school, which meant anything with a fingerprint of the Aina was still salvageable, including this hunk of junk appliance. She would prove it to George, ever the skeptic, restore the thing to its vintage gleam. She foraged through the untilled yard and the cluttered carport, and when she went to retrieve the dryer from the sidewalk, she saw the door had been opened and, inside, a baby. No, not a baby, something else. Lying fetal in the corner of the drum, the thing stirred. Its dark eyes, small as papaya seeds, its lips full and smeared in blood. No, not blood. She examined it closer and saw the burnished current was simply its native shade, the rest of it, naked and richly tanned. The realization lashed at her that this thing with its smooth, mature face bore the body of a newborn, and how could something so monstrous also appeal to her as beautiful? She reached into the dryer. The thing did not flinch when she folded her fingers around its bare belly, didn't carry her arms away or make to cry. She brought it to the light, and only then did it object, its adult face cinching into a tight grimace, so she hurried to the carport where she could catch some shade. She felt the thing repose in her arms. Girl 1 and 2 wept at the screen door, their rubber slippers slapping the hot asphalt under their feet. Leimomi hushed them. We need to be thoughtful. We need to let it sleep. But the girls pulled and tugged at her forearms, pressing, crying, so much so they attracted the attention of their brothers, boys 1 and 3 and 4, and their pawing fingernails left deep scrawls soaked into Leimomi's skin. How she cried out, for they were hurting her. Only upon sensing Leimomi's pain did the thing let out a cry that reached into her own throat and recovered a wool of her singular, curious suffering. The kids muffled their ears with their hands. It was a cry that tore cause from the feral rooster's jowls, a cry that reached even boy 2, the troubled child, below the Nimitz Bridge, where he smoked papalolo and set several strange fires with his buddies. Cars shuttled above him, tires screaming and engines sputtering, and he could still hear that cry in a way that might have tugged him home, had he not been strung out and too proud like his pops. No matter, because eventually the thing stopped crying and girls 2 sprinted away from their huddle just as boy 2 pawed at Leimomi's curled arms, asked with his soft eyes if he could hold the baby, and she had to correct him then. This is not a baby. And he questioned then, what is it? And before she could answer, girl 2 returned with a pillowcase, emerald monstera leaves embossed in the stitching, and she explained, for the baby. And then Leimomi sighed, seized by rote sadness and desperate longing for George to help her, as she repeated, this is not a baby. And girl 2 asked, then what is it? And Leimomi replied, it's a menehune. Everything she knew about menehune she had gleaned from her tutu, dead now. Would you believe there is no widely accepted understanding of these magical beings? Some wield the legend as a cautionary tale for their kolohe keiki, you act up like that, and the menehune going to turn you stone. Others print cartoonish caricatures of menehune malogarbed and laid as company mascots, treat them like cuddly elves, bearing beach tans and good cheer. The menehune of Tutu, however, were of a different class entirely. These were Hawaii's master builders, the skilled engineers who crafted entire loko'ia, stone heiau overnight and out of nothing. Laborers of the Aina. Only in oral legend were they said to be tiny, though now with men in the house, Leimomi had come to realize such narratives might in fact be built on something solid. Men was not the name we assigned her, but the name she gave herself. Men lived on fingers of poi and apple bananas and required total darkness to sleep. She padded through the house barefoot and naked while none of us bothered to drape her in our contemporary modesty. We left her alone. She took supreme care in examining every messy room, every trench of space in our too tiny home before settling back in the dryer, now pitched under the carport between the washer and a rusted sink we never used. Slept there the first night and left the door open, and the next morning, when Leimomi went to inspect the work required to restore the appliance, she found the dryer revived in its second life, haloed in light and standing on brand new spokes. She peered inside the drum. There was men, supine, asleep. More was restored after that. We went off to school and faked at paying attention to our kumu, and when we came home, our busted shower door was refastened to its hinges. In the kitchen, the drawer that was always acting up had been washed clean of the syrupy gunk ladling its runners, now opening and closing without even a groan or sigh. Outside, the unwoven clothesline spun back into itself, slung across the yard, stable and taut. Even the finicky lights suspended in the hall closet now blinked anew. We didn't understand it. We towed around men and knew from the recognition punching down our spines she was working overtime on the hale as the rest of the house slept. I'll stop there. Thank you. Thanks for giving me the courage to read that, Thomas.
Thanks for reading that. As some of you are aware, maybe some are not, but the story about Janurary and Kauai has a very special long history with our island, including the fact that, John, did you say the last census was what, 19...
I don't remember the exact date, but there was a census in the 1900s, and on the census in Wainiha, there were people that were labeled as menehune. That they lived in the Wainiha Valley.
It's super cool that it's like a full circle.
Thank you. And I love that too, because we were talking about that earlier today. And then it was only in revisiting the story that I was actually, reading through it and then realizing that, oh, it employs the we. And so that's some of the stuff that I wanted to talk with you all about today. So super stoked, super grateful. Thank you all so much again for having me, for being here. Yeah. Did you have a question? Yeah.
Why did you get courage to read the story?
Oh, that's a great question. You know what? I think that when you're doing readings with this book, or when I was doing readings with this book, I toured with it, and I had to read to all different audiences in a bunch of places, and I got really comfortable reading a few stories in particular. And I am a creature of habit, and also I crave comfort. And so anything that's sort of outside my comfort level kind of pushed me. But also, I think, in speaking with Thomas and Jonathan, I think also being inspired by the fact that I wouldn't have to feel like I'd have to over-explain everything in the same way that I might have had to in other settings. So it's honestly like a gift to be able to do this and share this with you all. So thank you. Thank you for the question. Yeah. Yeah. But yes, truly thank you all so much for just gathering with us and about, around writing, art making, storytelling. We're going to sort of continue the evening with a few writing exercises, and then I think we're going to do a conversation, Q&A. Before the writing exercises, I just wanted to say a few words, sort of, again, bringing us back to the collective, but really sort of talking about the topics of ancestral inheritance and storytelling, and ultimately, trying to advocate for a softer, sort of more just world. There's a lot in my opinion, so bear with me. But as I'm a teacher, I work with writers at the community college level, at the graduate level. I'm going to be working with undergrads in the spring. I work with writers in Hawaii and in Los Angeles, and in all of my teachings, one of my favorite things to talk about with writers is ancestral storytelling and ancestral inheritance. I don't believe that I write from, in a vacuum, and I don't believe it's possible to write in a vacuum. And I have always really sort of resisted the idea of the individual, from the perspective that, yes, we absolutely each have a very valuable individual voice, perspective, stories that we need to share. But that didn't just come out of us. I really believe that, we're writing from this perspective because of the inheritance of our families, our communities, our cultures, our ancestors, the people from whom we come from, the people that, the communities that we write for and from. And so that's sort of some of the stuff that I think about when it comes to, bringing our stories to the page. Because of this, my definition that I like to share with writers of ancestral inheritance is a broad one, right? So I, in my writing, I think a lot, or I talk a lot about my inheritance as a Kanaka Ōmihi writer, and a lot of the stuff that I write in my fiction is interested in exploring the mo'olelo that I inherited from my grams, from my mom's mom. That's a lot of the animating ideas that bring me to fiction in the first place. So I think definitely about ancestral stories as being these stories, these myths, these legends that I have inherited. And that's one part of it too, right? But it also, I'd say that with ancestral storytelling, that includes, the people in my family who have raised me. It includes the teachers who have taught me, the writers and activists who have inspired and galvanized me, as well as the mo'olelo, right? The cultural mythology, the folklore that I have, inherited and that has inspired my fiction. So when I talk about ancestral inheritance and ancestral stories, I'm talking, both about the largely cosmic, the mythic, as well as these intimately personal tales that I believe are equally worthy of consideration. So I have 2 exercises that we will get to. I think we're good with time, or maybe one, we'll see. But before I introduce the exercises, I did just want to give us a couple minutes. I just wanted to ask a couple questions and maybe give us just 2 or 3 minutes to just scribble, free write, just immediate responses. I think we have some paper. If people need paper, is there paper in there?
Yeah, there is a stack of paper right here.
Oh,
if
perfect.
anybody needs paper, you may want some.
If you want to use your phone, you can use your phone, whatever is
Anybody else want some paper? You're good.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Yes?
Yeah.
No problem.
And we'll just, spend a couple minutes. This is not actually the prompt. This is just sort of to lead us into the prompt. But I wanted to ask a couple questions that, again, just free write, whatever comes to mind first. But the first 2 questions are, what is the first thing you think of when you hear ancestral stories? And then the second question is, what does an ancestral story mean to you? So I'll repeat those. what is the first thing you think of when you hear ancestral stories? And what does an ancestral story mean to you? And we'll just do 3-ish minutes. The second question is, what does an ancestral story mean to you? The first question is, what is the first thing you think of when you hear the term ancestral stories? To wrap up, maybe whatever your sentence is, your line is. And again, this is not the prompt, but would love to hear just like a couple people if you want to share. Again, this is not published, polished, anything, just any first impressions, anything that first came to mind. Volunteered by Thomas.
Volunteered by Thomas. It's great. I love it. An ancestral story for me or for myself is food for my dreams. I love stories. I'm a storyteller. And the story is not only to dream about what somebody else is telling me and what I can suck in like a sponge, it's also learning out of it, changing it in my way, because every storyteller is changing a story and give it to the next person, and this always means growth for me and for the person around me. And all over, ancestral stories are mythology, history, growing, sitting at a fire, sharing shivers and laughter, and learning what the next generation needs to learn.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's beautiful.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Thank you. You covered like a bunch of stuff I was going to say next, so it's great.
Sorry.
Yeah, please.
To read?
Yeah, whatever.
Okay. My ancestor stories date back 5,000 years and start with Abraham Those stories go through historical meanderings of the Jewish Hebrew people until they end up with Sunday dinner at my grandmother's and grandfather's house. With six siblings, spouses, kids eating dishes that have come through Eastern Europe and flavored by the history of my people.
Gorgeous. Thank you. Historical meanderings. I love that. And I embrace the meandering. Thank you. Thank you. One other person? Yeah.
What I wrote is so bizarre because it's not what I wrote.
Yeah.
What is the first thing I think of? A black hole filled with lies that suck us in, buried, never to be seen again as pure, clear truth, but only rotten kernels covered in muck. I'm kind of thinking of today's current affairs and how do we get here? What does ancestral stories mean to you? I don't know. Storytelling was not part of my heritage, or at least not a part of my immediate family. Any form of creativity was looked down upon as wild, untethered, dangerous. So I'm the wild child.
Leaning into that danger, though, I think is exactly what it's calling. Yeah. And also the fact that you said it's bizarre and so visual. I love it because I write and lean into the bizarre. So thank you for sharing. Thank you all for sharing. We'll do more sharing after the actual prompt, but I just kind of wanted to get us thinking about that, get us writing about that. I love all those interpretations so much, and I also think that the range of responses really points to the fact that an ancestral story can mean so many things to so many different people, and that we all have different relationships to it, which I believe is what makes it such a powerful entry point for fiction in particular. At the same time, there's also a sacredness to a lot of the stuff we're writing, always, and especially with inherited stories that can make it really challenging to treat it as fiction, right? Questions that have come up for me is how do you decide what details to include, right? How do you describe a particularly formidable figure in your inheritance? How do you honor the source of the original story that you're trying to tell? I think equally important, and maybe some of the stuff that you were just mentioning too, is how do you almost fill the holes, the gaps, the fissures that are so common in any inheritance, and especially even those originating from an oral storytelling tradition, right? How do you fill those with your voice and your vision, your obsessions? That's what I love to do, is kind of join them in conversation, which is what I'll talk about in just a moment. But I really am sort of always asking, for me, what kuleana do I have to my indigenous community and our ancestors? What responsibility must I carry forth every time I set out to write? And it's important too with kuleana, where it is absolutely responsibility, but it's also right. It's also a right and a privilege, right? It's all of these things. I ramble about this because I want to acknowledge that the work, the weight of this work too, right? Ancestral stories are gifts; they are rights. But working with them in fiction also requires a lot of intentionality and care, right? And for me, in my fiction, I am less interested in exact retellings of Hawaiian mythology, and more interested in seeing my contemporary obsessions, my contemporary interests sort of in conversation with the stories of my ancestors, right? I think that, I mentioned intentionality, right? I talk about this with my students all the time. I believe that it's so important to clarify your art-making intentions for yourself, first and foremost, before you can infuse meaning into your work. That does not mean that you have to have a clear mission or sort of moral tale to tell. I come to fiction with questions, right? And I'm super clear with my intentions is that I'm coming to this story because I have questions and things that are haunting me that I can't figure out. And I'm not necessarily writing even to figure them out. I'm writing to find a place to put these questions and to find a so that's a way of clarifying your intentions. Those are my intentions. Another one of my intentions in writing work inspired by my ancestral tales and my ancestors is to advocate for a softer world. And for me, a softer world is one that embraces softness, it embraces tenderness, it embraces vulnerability as a strength, and really sort of tries to reimagine and subvert the idea of like, what is strength? Who has power? Why do they have power? Right? I write to try and advocate for a world that I truly believe my ancestors would be proud of. And through fiction, I really want to like reach readers as we sort of, in reading and writing, we're doing that work together, right? We're like collectively imagining. And it's only in doing that together where you can like collectively imagine a future that we wish to see, so that the next step is to collectively try to bring it into being, right? So yeah, that's what I have to say. And in sharing all of that, I want to give us a writing exercise that's sort of inspired by a lot of that. I have two. I don't know if we have time for two, but maybe we like do. I can offer both, and then share one. Yeah, I'll do one. Okay, so I'm going to offer one, and then what I'll do is we'll do one. I want to hear from you all, so I want to stop talking and make time for you all to share. And then before we sort of move on to the conversation, I'll give you the second one, and then you can take it home. Because again, these are both like meant to just be jumping off points. We can't do this in one 5-minute session. So, but I'll just say before I share it, while engaging with these exercises, I just really want you to, I encourage you to think super thoughtfully about your intentions, with writing and art making. Who are you trying to reach in your writing, right? What draws you to writing in the first place? Let the answers to these questions really guide your engagement with the prompts. And so the one that we'll do for today is to recall a time when you first learned of an ancestral story. This can be anything, right? This can be a myth central to your culture, a legend or superstition, a family tale from generations past that's assumed as sort of, familial mythology. It can be a friend tale that has really sort of impressed itself, or something that has happened with a friend. It can be anything really. But who told you this story? What was that experience like? Was it someone in your family or community? Try to capture that memory and your first impression of the story you received. Shock, disbelief, amusement, doubt. Right? So the prompt itself is to write this scene of receiving this ancestral story. And I always say start with a paragraph and then take it on if it feels like it's calling to you. So again, you're just thinking of a time when you first learned of an ancestral story, whatever that means to you. Who told you? Try to capture that memory, that receipt. Write this scene of receiving your ancestral story. See what comes out of that. And we'll spend maybe 5 to 7 pages. And I'll keep time, but I'm going to step away from
seconds.
Okay, that was longer than 30 seconds. I was feeling a lot of creative energy. Don't like interrupting that. And again, just a starting point, just an entry point. I'll share the other prompt after, but I want to stop yapping, and we've got about 10 minutes for folks to share, and I'd be really, really excited to hear what everyone, what came out of that prompt, if anyone wants to share. And if you want to, do you want to come up for this, or what would be best?
I'll
share.
I'll do the share.
I can bring the,
Yeah.
or should I bring
Is that okay?
Yeah.
I've got something to tell you. Her voice, so serious, felt hot like the sand beneath my feet. Side by side we sat in our creaky old beach chairs, hand-me-downs from who knows where. I stared at the blue, barely visible now under the angry waves. Okay, I said, wondering what could possibly be coming. This big sis always had my back. But now I felt her leaning into mine. Something happened when we were young. Okay. Lots happened, I thought. Why take a day at the beach and turn it into a hot pause? My fingers were still sticky from the shave ice. Something bad. My mind raced through the years. Sharing a bed, her warm butt pressed into mine, nose pushed up against the cold wall. I turned. Slowly, forcing my eyes to meet hers, knowing before I knew just how bad.
Thank you. Your attention to sensory imagery too, and sensory writing, while letting the dialogue carry forth the content and the story itself is really, really powerful. Thank you.
Let me yield the microphone.
You're told not. I'm blessed with friends. Really blessed.
My favorite movie lawyer.
So blessed with this friend. You owe me one. Okay. Even if I said that I love stories and learned a lot about it, it's not the ancestral stories that I learned from my parents. They weren't storytellers. But I visited a castle above forest at the edge of my town. Not spectacular, but beautiful, surrounded by trees and made out of old stones, maybe taken from other, even older castles, which standing there long before this small one. But in it is a glass cube, the home of a black hand, and a story made for scared kids. Don't behave bad. Don't hit your mom. Be a good kid, or your hand will look like that. The wrinkly, dry, bony little hand, teenager size, formed like someone wanted to pick up a stone with it. The owner, a wealthy boy, didn't listen to his dad. And as a consequence out of it was a visit by an ex. and the new home for the hand in a glass cube. What should you feel as a kid about this? Fear? No, curiosity was all that I felt in this moment, because luckily we are not living in this castle, not in this time. We know more than that. And I never use it as a sign for my kids, but only for some shivers.
I love that unexpected image too, but the fact that it was sort of those warnings, it felt like the collective too, because they're sort of unattributed warnings, right?
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And Sandra, it's very well in English and in German. Multi-language.
I love it. Thank you. Yeah. More. We have some time for more. Please. Yes.
Yeah.
My family wasn't big on stories. My family didn't share a lot about our ancestors or where we came from, so honestly a good amount of my life I didn't know much. I didn't have that instilled in me from a young age. Didn't have the stories of how the rock became a family friend or how my family got here. Years later, when I became interested in my ancestry in college, it was the first time I didn't really know my own history. However, I did grow up an avid reader, interested in stories that would take me out of reality and eventually even the ones that would face me with reality. I loved the library and would peruse the literature when I was younger. And at the time, I was in 6th grade with a huge hyperfixation on ghosts. Originally, I picked up the ones on the mansions of the mainland and how ghosts exist. Then I wondered about the ghosts here, the past of the place that I lived. Picked up the original Hawaii's Best original spooky tales and learned stories that were granted, laced with a little bit of fiction. Stories I searched for in Mo'olelo years later that introduced me to a whole world of haunting history of my home.
I shared that hyperfixation with ghosts too. And I love that you sort of confronted to immediately like the holes too. Yeah. Thank you. That was powerful. Anyone else? One or two more? Yeah, please.
I don't know if this is exactly on the right note, but when you get at my nose, the sunlight no longer reached over the surrounding mountain peaks, softening shadows amidst blue hue. I can barely read my own handwriting. I'm so sorry. What was left of the stone told stories of expansion and death, scars on the land and ruins. But once, I think, it must have had something glorious, if so often fought over. A hum in my chest kept me warm as the lake danced over stone to meet me. Unfamiliar, home, a sense I could not shake. As though my own blood ran through the patches of grass, up the hill, and down what was once long halls. This is it, I thought. This is the Urquhart Castle.
That's it. I'm going to get very micro-crafty right now, but I am a huge sucker for verbs. And I think about verbs all the time. The verbs in your excerpt are stunning, and I love, especially with in ascribing sort of the verbs to land and place. That's something I think about a lot. So I love it. Thank you. One more. Let's do one more.
I think you volunteered, but
If you want, whatever, yeah, whatever you want.
but you gotta project and
And loud.
Whisper, everyone can hear you.
I guess mine's just like a mix between our earlier writings, where I was trying to think of one story, and it was reflecting my grandparents' sister, and she was telling a story about her grandma and how she went did an inter-island trip on a surfboard by herself for some reason. And then you're just like, what? So it made me think of like all the stories that we don't really know if the thing that they like comes out. We don't know if it's like, where's the embellishing? Or where like something insane that you never think would happen actually happened. So we don't really know what. And then the earlier thoughts about ancestral stuff, I really thought about it like water. When I think about it, it condense, travel, disappear under the ground, resurface, and dry out, die, and then come back somewhere in spring. So I was thinking about that, the stories that just seem like implausible, but could be real, and then they come up randomly, and they disappear, and all these stories that just are gone. There might be somebody's ancestral story, but it will come up someplace else, another person's story, or somebody's. It's all like everywhere, I guess, but you don't know where they can come up.
I love that. And like, yeah, like what are the ripples too, right? What are the ripples in those words? That resonates with me a lot because I feel like that's happened so many times when I talk to grandma and grandpa, right? And I'm just like, what did you just say? And they drop that stuff so casually, right? But I think about that too in terms of, where is the embellishment? And then my brain too goes to also like, well, what is my relationship to that story, right? And I think a lot of the stuff you were saying, it reminds me of, or brings me to like the sacredness of those stories and like that gift and also that responsibility to that story and to honor that story. That doesn't mean you have to write that story or that you have to, share that story, but just like having that story and holding that story is a way of like honoring it too. And I think. But yeah, thank you for sharing. Thank you. I'm gonna bring Thomas to all the events to just get volunteer. But yeah, I think we're gonna do a little bit of conversation. Just wanted to say again, thank you all so much for being so willing to do this. I haven't had an opportunity like this before, and I really don't think that places like this, I feel like they're very few and far between. I don't think places like this always exist where we can share our work in a space where it's fully judgment-free, we're trying stuff out, we can be as weird or bizarre or whatever in our own practice. And so I love it, and I also think that it takes a lot of courage to share and to engage. So thank you all. Thank you so much.
You need help?
One moment. Yeah, please.
What is the word right now in the bathroom in giant letters? Be weird.
Yes.
That's really what it
Oh my
says.
gosh.
That's perfect.
I love that. Sorry, that's not.
Careful,
Oh,
man.
yeah.
My bad.
Your smiles right now, but
I'm gonna get me.
yeah, no. You never read her writer? Okay, so guys, we're gonna do a little talk story, like a guided conversation, and then transition that into Q&A. So while we talk, or if you already have questions, think of what you'd like to ask. Maybe we'll do that at the end.
Real fast, sorry for comments. Did you, before you start, Megan, do you want to tell us the second prompt that we can take home?
Oh, thank you for reminding me. Yes, I do.
Sorry.
Thank you.
That's why I keep you around, bro.
That's very helpful. Yeah, the second prompt is actually the thing that, I feel like it builds off of all the stuff we've been talking about. So, the second prompt is, how would you tell your ancestral story, either the one that you engaged with today, or a different story, to someone outside of your family, community? What point of view do you choose to narrate the story, right? What character or characters are central to that story? What details have remained sticky in your memory? What holes do you fill, and what do you fill them with? And so the prompt itself is really, again, you're thinking about reader and audience, right? How would you tell this story to someone outside of your community? Does that make sense? Yeah. Thank you.
It was a very good prompt. So you guys kind of take a moment to make sure you jot that down, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to do a little bit more hype work for me. So I was thinking about this somewhere. And like when I say like Megan is like the great Hawaiian author of our generation, like I'm not just blowing smoke. Like, first of all, would you say it's fair to say that maybe like our generation, right? You, Joseph, are kind of authors of this age. We're kind of like the children literarily of Tiana, Kahakaula, right? She's, I would say, the great Hawaiian author, right, of the last 10 years, who kind of like changed what it means to be a Kanaka author, or even just an author from Hawaii, right? Tiana Kahakaula. And this is what Megan is doing right now. And so for all you guys, if you like write in Hawaii, you're going to be judged against her. Hey, like for real. No, listen. So Chris McKinney, I think he won't mind me saying this, because he's very vocal, as he should be in supporting you. So pretty early on to my writing journey, and I guess I'm still pretty early in, but early, Chris has been like a good mentor for me. He kind of took me aside and said, hey, brother, I should be real with you. Megan is the standard that we're all getting judged against. So you better step it up, because she's killing us. And it's true. You guys need to buy her book, Every Drop is a Man's Nightmare, and study it. I'm so serious.
And if you speak French.
Yeah, today is the day. Yeah, that's right. The French publication of her book is out today, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, so today, so she's spending the day with us. It's very exciting, And so everything that you write as an author from Hawaii going forward, I mean, you're going to be judged. We're in Megan's world, is basically what I'm trying to say. She wrote the seminal, and I'm not trying to just do that, but for real, your article, right, she wrote for the New York Times, Survey of Hawaii Literature, reintroduced us to the world. When you look up Hawaii writing, I know because I Googled it, that article comes up. So, again, USA Today bestselling author, on a short story collection. You know how hard that is? As somebody who has got a short story collection, I tell you, it's very hard. To even get an agent, let alone to get picked up at a major agency, to get published at a major publisher, to do a print run for hardcover, make USA Today bestseller, and then do a paperback, and then get a French translation, all this kind of stuff. I'm telling you guys, buy a copy, study it. It's seminal. Okay? So, with that said, how's it feel to be the best? No, but I am curious for you, having arrived in this moment where I feel the Hawaii literary zeitgeist has kind of come upon you or swirled around in a sense. But Tiana, who are your Hawaii, in particular, Hawaii literary inspirations? Like, who do you draw from that helped make this such an amazing book?
I always talk about Tiana. Christiana Kahakaula wrote Business Paradise. I encountered that collection. I think it's just been 10 years or 11 years now. Yeah, and so that collection for me was always my standard too. I had always loved short stories in particular, and that's my first love in terms of fiction. But as Thomas kind of mentioned, stories are really, really hard to sell and to get any sort of conversation on. So Tiana was always a huge, huge inspiration for me. I felt like the thing that I gravitate toward in fiction are writers that feel like they are not afraid to take risks. And then the risks that they're taking on the page also don't feel like performative. There's something about the risks on the page, and again, some of this might be like even just personal or like ungraspable, or like I can't really explain why. Yeah, but there's something about certain risks that Tiana takes on the page that feel like they are necessary, they're urgent. And that's something that I've also encountered in Tiana Davenport's work. So Tiana Davenport has been also a huge inspiration for me. She novels primarily. So and then I do Lois Hancock, always. So I think I'd really definitely point to the three of them for sure.
Fire. Great picks. Okay, so another question, and this may be, I don't know, I'm looking for a pretty literary group here. What is something that you wish, when you first started into the business of writing, into the writing industry, right, starting to get published, what is something that you wish you knew that you might want to impart to people who are just starting out?
Oh my God. It's like so many things. I'm just like flooded with so many things. I didn't even know, I think about this all the time where it's like I didn't even know enough to know what questions to ask. And that honestly is like a big thing, was that I think that one thing that comes to mind right away is that I think I would have wanted to be a little more courageous in even just asking questions and not worrying about appearing a certain way, like ignorant or uninformed, whatever. So much of publishing is gatekept and very weirdly sort of shrouded in mystery that it doesn't necessarily need to be. And so that really is one of the things that that was a huge challenge for me. And so maybe this is a two-parter where I think it's like be okay with asking a lot of questions, but also maybe like surrounding yourself with community too, and being like doing things like this, because when I tend to ramble in these responses, so I apologize, but not to be too long-winded. When I had I finished my master's in 2023, like that. And it was the same time that 2022. It was the same time that the book was coming out, and I was also just moving back home. And I had spent, like, before I started my master's, I had spent 6 years doing PR in Honolulu, like hating myself and like hating the work. Really struggling to find time to write, and like struggling to enter the writing community and even to know where to start. And I think that if I had been a little more open in terms of just like putting myself out there, going to events, right? Like trying to meet people in different ways, I feel like I might have had people to ask questions to, even, in terms of publishing in Hawaii and like just meeting friends, honestly. And so I think community in the writing world goes such a long way. That comes into play in a lot of different, the business side of publishing. That comes into play when it comes down to even like selling your work. One of the first things that the editors that were interested in the collection had asked about was like, who do you know that could like give words about your work, right? Or even my agent actually said that before putting, trying to sell the book. Was like, do you have any writer friends that could like offer words of support? And since I've done that, since that process, I didn't have a lot of people. But now I'm seeing that come back. So there's a writer, like Zoe, I think you're great. Zoe is at the time I had been able to offer words of support for her collection that was also being shopped around. So I think that the more that we can do that as Hawaiian writers is going to be like very important and valuable. Okay, I'll stop talking. Sorry.
No, Ramblers Anonymous, man. It's all valuable stuff, yeah. So, and again, sorry, because I have really get into weeds. But something that I really admire, and I think this has probably come up for you a lot, is just your sentence level craft, like your prose, on a line by line level. It's just really, really well written. What goes into, do you spend a lot of time polishing each sentence? What goes into making those lines that just shine?
Yeah. I like to rewrite, and so my process is very long because of that. And so I write very messy-ish first drafts of things. I like to take the pressure off as much as possible on the sentences. But sentences is where I feel like voice, you can kind of find the voice of the writer. And so I have a lot of love for trying to really bring my voice into every sentence. And in doing that, it does take a lot of care. And so usually that first draft is less focused on that precision of every single line. But I think that comes in all the rewriting process. And so revision, I love talking about revision. If anyone wants to talk about revision after this, I'm always game. Revision is where I spend 80% of my time because it's rewriting. It's trying another sentence. It's seeing what, changing up verbs. I was talking about verbs. I love verbs, and I spend too much time on verbs, and I've tried to pull back on that. But that's really where I spend a lot of my time in trying to just see how does one, not just the sentence as a standalone too, but how do sentences that are paired next to each other create tension? How does the sound change? How does the rhythm change when you put a really long, rambling sentence and then punctuate it with a very short one? And so that all happens for me in revision. But I don't really always think about it as revision because it's actively rewriting the prose and trying.
Yeah, you're very good with the cadence and the rhythm, the flow of your sentences. Actually, so here's something that I didn't plan to ask, but just popped in my head when I realized that. So it was your French translation. What goes into, so presumably, if you reach a certain threshold of success, your book will get published in other countries. But generally, it's still going to be in English. Right? So when you actually get a foreign rights, right, it's a sale, it's a dedicated translation if it's in a different language. And then a lot of work goes into translation, you know what I mean? And so, was there a particular reason? Are you big in France? What's the,
Yeah. No, foreign rights is, I do not know anything about it. No, I know a smidge about it. What happens with that is, that's all on the agency side. And so when you're publishing and wanting to put out a book, the first step is usually querying for an agent. And this sometimes happens with the agent or the agency, right? The agency that the agent works for. Sometimes it happens with the publisher. The agent that I signed with, Iwalani Kim, who is from Hawaii, which I think is so cool. There's very, very few. I don't know any other actually literary agents that are from Hawaii. I feel so, that's awesome for here. her agency that she works for has a really, really strong, they're founded on their foreign rights team. And so they've sort of built around that. So they retain, it's called retaining the foreign rights. Sorry if this gets too technical.
No.
I can do the
I'm
abbreviated version. But essentially, if they retain the foreign rights, then they go out and like try to sell the rights to other publishing houses in different countries. And so that sometimes, for most books, that takes years and years.
Yeah.
So like, Night of the Living Res, for example, I think sometimes like those collections might get foreign rights now for another country, even if it came out like a few. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So it's a whole process. I'm not involved with it. I'm super grateful that exists. But yeah, it's either in the control or the responsibility of the agency, or it's the responsibility of the publishing house that acquires your collection. And that happens, your book, and that happens once your agent sells your book to a publisher, an editor.
Well, there you go. Yeah. Okay, so I want to have some time for you guys to ask some questions. So I'm going to ask one more kind of fun one.
Yeah.
And this is something I love to ask people of any kind of art, not just writing, but two-part. One, what is one area or facet or whatever of your writing, right, that you feel you are underrated on? And what is one area where you think you might be a little overrated on?
Oh my gosh. You need to prepare me with these questions. What the heck? Okay, so...
You didn't clear these? It wasn't in your writer.
Yeah. It wasn't in my writer.
Is this the green M&A?
Okay, I'm going to try my best to answer
Okay,
this
sorry to
question.
put you on the spot.
No, it's good. The first thing that comes to mind, and I don't know, again, I try to answer this in terms of underrated, overrated, but I can say that dialogue is actually something that I have a really hard time writing.
Really?
Like it does not, for me, in my opinion, it doesn't come naturally to me. It takes the longest for me in my writing process, and that's the thing that and I'm thinking in terms of underrated, overrated, just like the people who I've been speaking to the most lately, which is literally just my editor and my agent. But that's the thing that she's always like, do more of this. This is working. This is good. And I'm like, oh, but it's the hardest thing. I don't want to. And then something that maybe I feel overrated. Okay, I think that the biggest thing, there's so many things, it's like, I feel really proud, honestly, of a lot of the sentences, right? And I, like you pointed out, I spend a lot of time trying to create a mood in what I write. And I often, I feel like that's where voice comes out, and so I have a lot of pride in just like the line level of it. And just most recently, I've been working on the novel that I've been on contract for, and so many of those lines are just slashed from my editor, and I'm like, okay. So it happens, and I think the more honestly, like the more that happens, the more I'm like actually crave it, because I'm as you know, and as we all know, like we all grow as writers all the time. Like every day I come to the page, I feel like a different person, and I feel like I learn so much from reading other writers, from talking to other writers, and so sometimes, most times, I'll come to a story and I'm like, wait, that's way overwritten, and so I now am like, okay, yeah, I need those cuts, I crave those cuts, so yeah.
That's a good answer.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, with that said, guys, now's your chance to ask me if you guys have any questions, anything like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know, Mike, I just want to know, how do they treat dialect in a foreign book?
That's a great question in terms of like,
That's what I read.
Okay, and that's a hard question for me to answer because of the fact that I don't speak French or read French, right? So when with the French, so the French is the only translation that is actively translated in another language. I also have it in the UK, but that's, some of the spelling is different, but it's still in English. And with the French translation, I just worked incredibly closely with the translator, like closer than I thought, where we exchanged so many messages, where she was asking for clarification on what things meant. And so, I can't fully speak to how that translates into the actual language, but it was almost like it was like an exchange of knowledge, right? It's like, what does this phrase mean? And I trust, I think with translation, I feel the same way about like film rights, so the book is sort of like trying to be optioned and that sort of thing. My view on it is that once, like I did the thing, I wrote the stories, and once it's out in the world, it's like, it's mine, but it's not mine anymore, right? It's with readers, it's with the translator, it's with other people. I don't feel too precious about it, and so I trust that translator, and I really, really trust that publisher, and so I have to like be okay with letting that, letting them honor it, right? Yeah. But thank you for that question. Yeah.
A follow-up to that.
Yes.
Is the translator a writer as well? Does she write?
She is,
okay,
yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
it is.
Yes, yeah.
So it's almost like you're collaborating on a new piece of art.
Yes,
right?
exactly. Yeah. It's like a transformation. It's a new thing. Yeah. Yes.
I was kind of curious, how did you decide whether to self-publish or go with a publisher if it's your baby?
Yeah.
There's so much time and energy into, and then how do you decide who to go with and trust who? I mean, it also depends on who's really good with you, but
yes.
No,
I
have no idea how that process.
Well, I love that you're framing it like that too, though, is because I feel like as writers, often we're told that like it's the agent, like getting an agent, for example, is like the gold star, and once you have an agent, you've made it, right? And that honestly doesn't mean as much. Like it's like it hasn't even been sold yet, right? And so I think that our perspective, I think it's really important that our perspective does shift in a way where it's like, yes, getting an agent is this huge step in terms of publishing your book with like a quote-unquote traditional publisher, but it's also you choosing that person. It's you trusting that person with your stories and your voice. And so I can just say that for me, I tried to bring intentionality to the question. I did want to traditionally publish, aside from literally the practicalities of like needing money. Like I also know that self-publishing, it takes so much for me. It takes a lot of work and a lot of self-promotion. I don't like the self-promote, as Thomas knows. Like I like to write. I don't like the public-facing stuff. And self-publishing often demands a lot of that. It demands a lot of social media. I don't like social media. So I wanted to traditionally publish also to have that, those resources that were available. But yes, in terms of like trying to decide and choose, going with Ivalani was one of the best things I've ever done. And again, I'm so grateful that she saw something in my work. But I also am really, really, glad that we were able to collaborate, because when I queried, I was really intentional about wanting like an editorial partner, so someone that I could work with, where it's like this can still be my baby, but I've taken it as far as I can go, and I feel like I really need another perspective that I trust that can kind of bring it even further. And so when I queried, it was like the manuscript is as good as I can make it, but before we even try to sell it, like I want to work on it with you. And so I think, maybe even getting to a place with your project where maybe you feel that, where it's like you feel like you've done everything that you can do, or maybe you've spent so much time with it and you can no longer like see it clearly, right? Yeah, like there's different levels of like where different writers are at when they want to take that next step. But I guess that's one thing I would think of. Yeah. Does that answer the question? Yeah.
That's a good question.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
I'm going to be rushing off to catch a bus. So.
Yes.
How much do you think? I want to know about portions of your time. How much for writing? How much for reading? How much for teaching? How much for just talking? How much for living? Whatever you can say about your life.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think It depends on the season, for sure. I always try to make mornings my writing times. And so that's when I write best. That's not when everyone writes best. That's when I write best. So I really try to write in the early mornings, usually like 5 to 7, 8, I don't know. I'm a morning person. I sleep at 9, okay? Let's be clear. But yeah, teaching when school is in session, that takes up most of my time. When we are, that's a huge chunk of it. Family is a huge chunk of it. And so I think it's maybe, the proportions aren't ever exact or sort of consistent. Reading is everything. So reading, thank you. Reading is the thing that makes me want to write. And so, thank you for bringing back to that, is that before I start writing in the mornings, I have to read first. And so that's why it's 5. is because I'm reading well before I start writing for quite some time. Yeah. And then I have to read it. I say have to. I'm pulled to read at night before I go to sleep. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
I think it was time for one more.
Yeah.
And then give you the quick signing and
Yeah.
sales and stuff. One final question, anybody?
I have one, but I don't want to take it.
No. I don't have one.
I grew up here in Hawaii, and I was telling my students about this because we were reading from your book. In our family, my dad always told us stories at night. And he would, like you were saying before, I don't know if the stories are true or not, because a lot of the stories would be like, I'm telling you a story about my life, but in retrospect, it was probably all BS. But he would often read from a book called The Hawaiian Teller of Tales. That was our nighttime story. I don't know if you know that collection or not, but so many of your from the list of Kanaka superstitions, right? Like so many of them, like, oh, I know that story. I know that my dad told me that story when I was 8, when I was 9, and I'm just wondering about. Well, I was wondering, first of all, if you're familiar with those stories, but like how many of those, like those superstitions where you're like, oh yeah, these were told to me by my family members, etc. Those are so deeply ingrained in my psyche now.
Yeah. I'm familiar with that. I don't know the last time I revisited that, actually. I can say that with those stories, or like those superstitions, right? Those came out of that story itself actually came out of a writing prompt, which is why I love prompts and take prompts super seriously. Bless you. But I think that those stories for me were snippets, not from like one person in particular, but they were exactly like snippets from, like collected from across like years, right, of growing up. And so I feel like there's something about like the idea of superstitions when they're also grounded in like a don't, right? When they're like a negative or something that is a command, a warning, that feels like it just buries into your brain and into your soul. And so that has always struck me too, and has stayed with me as well.
I mean, they reminded me so much of like, because I'm thinking of the story which took my father 45 minutes of adapting to tell, right? But that story is really boiled down into don't take pork over the mountain, right? Don't point at your father's grave. And so like, I was thinking about the relationship between, like what was the point of that story that you're telling me? Part of it is fun and entertainment, but you boiled it down into these like, life lessons, right?
Yeah, warnings for sure. And I think that in putting the collection together, that was actually suggested at some point in terms of structure, because what ends up happening in the collection is that it's almost like a sample, and I don't even know if the sample is the right word. It's like a foreboding almost, where it opens with the risk, right? And every story that follows in the collection engages with each one of those in some small or large way. And you kind of see the consequences play out in the stories that follow. So
you ignore.
I'm a structure nerd too, if I can also say something about structure. That really helped to kind of structure the collection for me. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for coming out.
Yeah.
Thank you so much to Megan for being our guest of honor and talking to us. We really appreciate it. Big thank you, I forgot, but Councilman Burosan and Hale Līhuʻe for hosting us as well. We've been doing this in the parking lot. Thank you guys all. Megan, thank you. And you guys want to get her autograph, buy some books, whatever? Now's the time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
The book's outside.
Oh, yes, sorry.
You may bring it